press record. There we go. So that's really just for anyone who can't join us. So I am Alice. I think we'll get going. And
Okay.
obviously, there's Shane joining from I Still 38 Vodka. So hi Shane, thanks for joining us in. So for anyone who doesn't know Alice, which I'm sure is very few of you, Alice is the co-founder of Fox's Bow Whiskey. She is presently in the land of Texas in the US of A. So it's quite early. I think it's about 9 o'clock there. Is it, Alice?
It's 8. You're getting me very early now.
So thank you for having your, all being with us so early. And we asked Alice to kind of be this first presenter for us because Alice very kindly helped me about a year ago in creating a kind of a deck for our alcohol members and kind of what was going to be of interest for you. So Alice is very kindly giving up her time. So I'm going to pass you over to Alice now. Alice, I'm going to make you host, and then you can share. Oh, hold on now. Make host. There we go. So you can share your deck and everything. So here's to the first of many. So thanks, Alice. Off you go.
No worries. Let me just pull this into presenting mode. Again. Okie doke. Okay, so Andrea mentioned it there, but I'm Alice. I'm the co-founder of Fox's Bow Whiskey. We launched in Ireland at the end of 2021 after many production delays and hiccups and everything along the way. And what I would say is I'm definitely no more of an expert than the rest of you guys in this field. But what I have found in our journey since even, concept of this idea is I've learned so much from my peers, as much through kind of their knowledge and expertise as through the mistakes that they've made and that they've really kindly kind of shared their learnings with me on. So today is less me talking as an expert at you guys because you're definitely my peers, but more so me sharing my experience and the mistakes that we've made in the hopes that hopefully some of you guys haven't come up against those mistakes or challenges yet. And when you do, maybe you could learn from our mistakes. So that's really kind of the starting point, I guess. In terms of our pack, so this is our team. So I'm definitely not doing this alone. There's my co-founder, Tony, who doesn't come from the spirits world. He's actually a financial accountant by trade. So I'm very lucky that he's kind of the yin to my yang since day one. And then we have the amazing Ash on our team and Darren, and the two of them kind of look after marketing and I suppose collaborations and things like that in the traditional sense. But as you guys know, when you're in a small startup, you have to be a jack of all trades. So they end up doing absolutely everything anyway. So I definitely am really lucky that I have a rockstar team. And this has been, I suppose, a work over the last almost 3 years now. So a lot of learnings along the way. So just to give a little bit of context on Fox's Bow before I kind of move into the learnings. So we actually started, like all great ideas, born in a bar, which sounds like it's made up, but it actually isn't. And the more spirits founders that I talk to, or alcohol brand founders that I talk to, the more I realize how common that story is. So a lot of us have started on the back of a coaster or a napkin in a bar, but it was actually my co-founder was living in San Francisco. So he didn't come from whiskey at all, didn't come from spirits. He was actually working with Google at the time. And he was in this unbelievably well-stocked bar in San Francisco, whiskey bar. But looking up at the shelves, he really felt that a lot of the bottles very much looked the same. It was that kind of sea of black and green traditional bottles, very much focused on the past. And there was little that really reflected that modern, vibrant, contemporary Ireland of today that we're so proud to be from. So really, that's what kind of triggered this whole thing. And we really went about trying to remedy that. And the hardest part for us, and this is lesson number 1, is realizing that it's actually not about you. So there are so many brands out there that you can see that have launched, like I'm a total whiskey head. So have launched an unbelievable whiskey. It's like, you know, a whiskey head's dream, but it's so niche because they've created something in their own vision, instead of thinking about, right, if I want to make this kind of successful from a business perspective, where's the biggest market, or who is my target consumer? So I guess that's lesson number one, is consumer research is so important and market research is so important, and recognizing that just because you have an opinion on something or you like a product attribute doesn't necessarily mean that it's going to be commercially viable. So if this is something that is more than a passion project for you, you need to keep that in mind. And I guess the first place to start is thinking about who is your product actually for. And there's obviously different ways that you can do this. The traditional way would have been kind of solely demographic. So, you know, is it male or female? How old are they? Where are they living? But now what's starting to happen is more of a shift toward this kind of psychographic, which is really hard, because if you're working with any type of agency, this is what they like because this is clean. So if you're trying to kind of target someone on Instagram, for example, these are the parameters that Instagram likes. They like gender, they like age, all of those things are very like quantifiable. But actually, you know, like I'm in the US now, and if you say a 25 to 35-year-old male, that doesn't really tell you anything, because the landscape is so diverse. You know, like, what does that even mean ethnicity wise, you know, social standing, jobs wise, all those kind of things. It's not clear enough anymore. So now there is kind of this shift towards psychographic, which again is harder to measure, but it's definitely a lens that you should be putting in place when you're thinking about who you're targeting. So we know for us, for example, that our target are digital natives. They're used to having everything at their fingertips. They're young and they're passionate. They're ignited by adventure, exploration, achievement, and pleasure beyond the mainstream. They're slightly higher earners than their peers, and they're highly ambitious. So they want to be viewed as successful and living the high life. All of these things you can't just input into Instagram to start targeting someone, but this kind of knowledge will then inform what types of ads that you put out into the world, or like how you show up so that you're resonating with your target consumer. And another layer to that then is figuring out what else you know about them. So, you know, what are their top sources of info? Where are they kind of getting their recommendations and information from? What social channels are they using? What are the drinking occasions for them? And then for us, you know, when we kind of did a deeper dive on that, when we were thinking about whiskey values, we were like, right, this isn't the old guard. We know we're going for the younger generation. So what do they value when it comes to whiskey? And definitely challenge the information that comes back to you, especially if you're doing something like a panel or consumer research where you're asking consumers questions, because what people say they do and what people do are two very different things. So if a doctor asks you how many times in the week you drink, you probably lie, because there's some type of judgment or something in there, whereas what you actually drink would probably be significantly more than that. So think about that in your own experience. That also applies to consumers. And I think consumers like being a little bit naive about themselves, like we all do. So kind of think about, right, for example, if they're saying, I aspire to things which are luxurious and sophisticated, really what they mean is they want to look successful in front of their friends. So that's kind of the insight that you want to pull out, so that you can create a product then that helps them do that. So that's all well and good to say, but like, where do you even go? Like, what market do you even go to? And there are obviously so many variables when it comes to this, but here are some things to consider. So the first is obviously the prevalence of your target consumer. So if you've established who that person is or who those people are, those groups, you want to go somewhere where they're very prevalent. So that would probably be like the first thing I would think of when I think about things to consider in terms of market dynamics. The second is ease of access and resources required. So assuming that you guys are in a similar boat to me, where you're not backed by a multimillionaire daddy or a multinational company, ease of access and resources is a really important thing to think about. So what will I need to enter this market from a kind of resource and capital perspective? Will I need feet on the street? can I move there? Or does that mean that I need a full-time employee on the ground? How much does that cost? Is that commercially viable for me? What is the required A&P commitment? You know, do we need a distributor? And can we get one there? What are kind of the limitations in terms of actually accessing the market? The other, oh, sorry. The other thing then is tax structure and other cost factors like that. So, you know, what are the kind of distributor and retailer margin expectations for that market? What's the cost of doing business?
Yeah, you want to go to the we work it all out. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Yeah, I know.
Sorry, make sure everybody's on mute, please. Rachel.
Okay.
Yeah. Is everybody on mute? Perfect. Thank you all.
Sorry, I wasn't sure if someone was asking a question there. Yeah, tax structure and other cost factors. So, you know, what are the distributor and retailer margin expectations? Like, is that in line with what you can activate against? What's the cost of doing business? So will you need a broker, for example? The US is so big. In the US, I'm in Texas and we still need a broker. So all of those things like to take into consideration. And then other brand specific priorities. So, you know, for us, because we knew that our target were digital natives, we needed to make sure that there was a sophisticated e-commerce infrastructure in place in the markets where we were activating, because we knew that they were buying everything else online. So if they couldn't buy alcohol online, all of a sudden that's kind of a limitation. So if there are things that are very kind of relevant to your brand and to the consumer that you're trying to go after, obviously those things are really important to consider as well when you're entering a market. Another one I would mention that's definitely more category specific is knowledge of the life stage of the category. So taking poaching as an example, will you, if you go into a market, have to educate people on what poaching is because they've never heard of it before, and then on why your poaching is the one to buy? Or is the market a little bit more sophisticated where they understand what poaching is? So actually the job to be done for you is educating them around why your poaching is the one to buy type thing. So things like that kind of are an extra layer to consider that are very brand specific and consumer specific. So where do you get all of this information? Basically, beg, borrow, steal. So we're lucky in the sense that we're all small brands. The industry is very generous in terms of sharing its kind of resources and things like that. You know, I found that like people who are working in multinationals are actually as generous about sharing information as kind of ourselves amongst peers, because they don't really see us as a threat. Like we're not their competition. So in general, they actually are quite happy to kind of share information. What I would say across the board, and this applies to Board BIA and any of the other kind of resources that I included here, is it's much better when you're going with a specific question rather than broadly being like, do you have information on, you know, consumers in the US? It's too broad of a question. Whereas if you're like, we're looking at Texas as a market, you know, we're really interested in Irish whiskey drinkers or bourbon drinkers or whatever it is, do you have information on that? Board BIA have a mandate where they can only share, I think it's 20, if not 25% of any given report. So the more specific you can be in your question, the better kind of information that they'll be able to provide to you. But some other good resources are WARC, they have a trends report, consumer trends report. Most of the social platforms have their own consumer trend reports, which come out annually. So TikTok has their What's Next report, Instagram has Trend Talks, all of those are publicly available. Agencies on LinkedIn as well will often share a lot of kind of consumer research that they've done as a way of like initiating business or trying to become like experts in the field. But for us, that's unbelievable for sourcing kind of insights and inspiration and things like that. So one that I find really good is a social agency in the UK called Born Social. They do white paper reports quite frequently that they release for free on LinkedIn. So that's a good place to look as well. Then obviously Board Bia has like infinite consumer reports, which also brings me over to category insights. So IWSR is kind of the go-to that we use. Now, it costs about 25 grand a year to have access to it. So again, this is where you're asking Board Bia for very specific insights on things, and you ask them, can you get it from IWSR? IWSR can show you kind of spirits performance by market, you know, breakdown of brands that are dominating kind of the category in that market, rolling 12 data, rolling 6, rolling 3, things like that. They come out annually, really good kind of resource. IWA and IBEC for whiskey. The Adams Handbook is essentially kind of a full liquor report for the US. Again, Board Bia have access, they'll give you 20 to 25%. So be very, very specific in what you're asking for. So either ask for market specific or like state specific information or category specific. But they have that, and it's a really good resource. It's really insightful. And then Park Street is an importer in the US. Even if you're not signed up with them, like we're not signed up with them, they have unbelievable daily newsletters and podcasts and webinars that will give you really good insight into the market, but also like category dynamics, trends they're seeing up and coming, like conversations like this, tips on getting distributors, all that kind of thing. It's a really, really good resource. And then another one is Mark Brown has a daily newsletter. Again, you can just sign up for this. You just email that email there, but it's definitely more US focused. Like there's definitely a US lens, but he does share a lot of information around kind of merger and acquisition trends and like the trajectory of multinationals that obviously ultimately affect us and things like that. So I definitely would recommend signing up to that. And then if you feel it's not relevant for you after the fact, obviously like unsubscribe, but I find it really good. And then another one is Distill Ventures, which is the acquisition arm for Diageo. They do a huge amount of kind of webinars and category in-depth papers and trends reports and things like that. So if you're following them on LinkedIn, they're really good for sharing that type of stuff as well. And then in terms of market insights, so Board Bia market reports, Board Bia have in-market representatives, so they can put you in touch with someone, let's say in New York for the US market, things like that. They have that all over the world. So does Enterprise Ireland. And then Mintel has a lot of free reports, IWA and IBEC again for whiskey, excuse me. And then like KPMG, Ernst & Young, a lot of the kind of larger accountancy firms as well, they'll share market insight reports too that are all free and available on the internet. And then just some bonus tips. Focus groups are brilliant for consumer insights. In-store tastings, I've actually found fantastic because you're getting feedback directly from the consumer, like straight from the horse's mouth, so to speak. So we have found through tastings that product attributes that we're articulating in Ireland are not landing in the US, but what is landing in the US is the bourbon cask finish, as an example. So like, don't underestimate the value of actually doing those in-store tastings yourself every once in a while to get kind of that feedback straight from the horse's mouth. Bartenders are another great resource because they're much more kind of into the liquid and they understand kind of the flavor profiles or like what gets them excited. So that's really good to involve them as well. And they also love being involved with kind of small startup brands. So would definitely lean on bartenders as well. And then Board Bia does offer to co-fund consumer research. So we actually did a piece with them for the US with a consumer agency called Opinions. It was absolutely brilliant because when we were going into the US and we were showing kind of proof of concept, we were showing Ireland and they were like, we don't care about Ireland. Ireland is a speck compared to America. Like what resonates there isn't necessarily going to resonate here, which we were like, okay, fair enough. But like, how do you show success in a market you've never been in? So Board Bia and Opinions did a research piece for us and we were basically then able to go, right, here are 3 really strong stats. Go to a retailer, go to a distributor and say, okay, we haven't launched here yet, but you know, 95% of 25 to 30-year-olds said that they'd be interested in this product, blah, 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 blah. So you're kind of getting a bit of market justification before you even go in, which is great. So definitely take advantage of that with Board Bia. And then test and learns on your own social. There's nothing better. It's like cheap and cheerful. It helps you see what's resonating with consumers, and then you can very quickly change things to see, you know, if something else works better or anything like that. Other founders, as I said, but the advice I would give is cast the net wider than Ireland. Like, everyone is in the same boat. Someone in Sweden who's starting a vodka brand is going to feel the same as someone in Ireland starting a vodka brand. The challenges are the same. The markets might be different, but they might have some insight that you don't have, and vice versa. So definitely, you know, just reach out to someone. The worst that can happen is they don't reply or they say no, but like, you're in the same position as you started in. So definitely worth a try. Your retail partners, obviously they know way more than we do when it comes to the end consumer in their particular stores. So like, ask them like what trends they're seeing, what interests them, what are they kind of bonused off and things like that as well. And then for market insights, one thing I would say is visit the market if you can. We learned more last year when we came to Texas for 10 days than we had probably learned about Texas in like 10 months of emails or desk research or anything like that. So if you can, it's definitely worth the commitment, time-wise and money-wise, to go to the market. Like, it'll just save you so much money in the long run. And then for US compliance, like state level info, anything like that, Park Street is brilliant for that as well. So they're Park Street University. So yeah, 2 key takeaways from this: know exactly what you're looking for. So what specific questions are you trying to answer? Don't blindly read reports, otherwise it quickly becomes like analysis paralysis. This is especially useful for asking Board BS something, since they can't share the full reports, and also for asking other founders since they're as busy as you guys. And then secondly, get resourceful about your resources. So who do you know that might have access to a page report that you found, or who might be able to answer a specific question for you? Be bold about asking. The worst they can say is no, but most people like helping the little guys, so it's not too much effort on their part. So secondly, the company you keep. So building strong industry and relationships and the value of that. So with this, things to consider, and I've definitely applied an American lens for this because that's where I am at the moment, but I think most of these apply across the board. So the most important thing is, it's a bit of a Goldilocks situation, which is frustrating because we all want things done yesterday, but you definitely need to find the right fit, or else in the long term, you'll get burned. So take that time and effort and just be patient with it, and don't say yes to everyone. So both from the perspective of you could end up getting in bed with the wrong person, but also from the perspective of chasing cases everywhere, like any random market in the world. Saying yes to everything will make you look fantastic in your first year because you've done an amazing amount of volume. But if you're not nurturing those sales and kind of creating a bit of a buzz around your brand and rate of sale, you won't get an order the following year or the year after that. So it's kind of lapped volume, which isn't great. So I definitely would be very considerate in who you say yes to from a partner perspective and from a market perspective. Distributors, do you want to be a big fish in a small pond, or do you want to be a small fish in a big pond? So in the US, for example, there are 2 kind of main distributors, RNDC and Southern. The feedback that I've gotten from a lot of brands is that those are the 2 that you want, or those are the 2 that you think you want, because those are the 2 with national distribution. They have unreal distribution in every single state. They're so well known, all the rest of it. But they have so many brands in their portfolio, and they have a lot of really big brands in their portfolio that spend a lot of money with them. So you could just be at risk of going into their portfolio and just getting swallowed up and forgotten about. So you really need to think about whether you do want to be that small fish in their big portfolio. And maybe you do, maybe that does work for you. Maybe like within the category that you're in, they don't really have that many brands or whatever it is, or you have the opportunities lined up. Or would you prefer to be a small fish in a big pond? So those are kind of considerations. I'm not saying one is right and one is wrong. Those are considerations that you just need to really think about before you start approaching distributors. And then in terms of retail, so start small and prove the concept. If you go to too many stores to begin with, it's likely you won't be able to properly support them all, and you'll get delisted. And it's way harder to get relisted after a delist than it is to start small and grow over time. This is something that we learned the hard way. We went into Tesco, they put us into 83 stores straight away. We weren't in a financial position to support that at all. So we ended up getting dropped to like, I think closer to 30 stores. So that'll be really hard for us now to make up and prove that we should be back in those 80 stores. So ideally, in a perfect world, we would have started in the 30, built over time, tested things, proved the concept, and then grown with them. So definitely, even though it seems like an amazing thing to go into 100 stores straight away, take your time, prove the concept, find your feet, and then kind of grow within the retail space. And then the last thing is offer something unique. So our superpower as small brands is that we have agility. So use that to your advantage. So if you can quickly hack a bespoke label, let's say for a distributor, for a retailer, is that something that would be valuable to them? And that's actually something that we did recently. We did a Texas edition for the largest alcohol retailer over here, Specs, and they absolutely loved it because Texas loves Texas, but also retailers love anything that's exclusive to them. So it isn't about, you know, reinventing the wheel. Maybe you can repurpose liquid and it's a limited edition box, or it's a limited edition label work or collector's item or something like that. But just using the agility that we have to our advantage that multinationals don't have is really important. So again, where do you find your match? So Borbia actually is a really good resource to start with. They have importer lists and distributor lists by market. IWSR is good too, because you can see who other brands are using as importers or distributors in different markets. Adam's Handbook, again, US specific, but it's really good. Importers usually are quite honest about the pros and cons of specific distributors that they work with, because they have no skin in the game. They kind of work with everyone. So MHW and Park Street in the US, even before you sign on with the specific distributor, you can ask them a lot of questions about different distributors and things like that. Other markets, or sorry, other founders who you know that are in that market. So who are they using? What's been their experience? Obviously try and avoid the same category founders, because like there might be a bit of a conflict of interest there, but think about founders as well outside of Ireland, because they're also in the same boat as you in the sense that they also need an importer or distributor for the US, or a distributor for different markets and things like that. And then think about your own personal or professional non-alcohol related network. So who do you know that lives in that market, or that might know someone that you could ask about retailers, bars, etc., from a consumer perspective? Because that's actually really valuable as well. Bonus, again, nothing beats meeting people in person. So it's really worth the investment to go to the market and meet with or pitch to the distributor in person. There's so much that you can feel from someone's energy, obviously in real life versus over a Zoom or whatever. So it's worth the investment. Same with retailers, if that's an option. I know it's not always, like sometimes they'll only meet the distributor, but if there's any option whatsoever for you to pitch over your distributor, always push for it, because no one loves your baby as much as you do. And then remember, it's like dating, so it takes time to find the right match. Be patient and diligent. We've definitely made mistakes. We signed on with a distributor in South Africa that we thought was going to be the bee's knees, and it turned out to be an absolute nightmare, and we had to get out of it and all the rest of it. So definitely take your time to find the right match. And then tips on making and keeping pals. So know when to be annoying and when not to be. So when not to be annoying is to your importer key contact. So they can provide a lot of insight and value, and they can get you out of a pickle when the time comes. Just be sound, appreciate their work, keep them in the loop on the wins. Same with your distribution reps. So they have hundreds of brands in their portfolio, and I can guarantee yours isn't the one keeping the lights on. Ours definitely isn't. So how can you create top of mind awareness with them? How can you make their lives easier so that they like you and they'll help you? Ride-alongs are a great place to start to understand their jobs and their problems. Don't be annoying to the retail buyer. So figure out what they care about. What's the buyer bonus on, for example? Focus on adding value to their lives, and it shouldn't be take. So time with them is precious. Just don't waste it. Don't be annoying to the retail staff or bartender. No one really gives a shit that you're the founder, like just on a spade. So leave your ego at the door. They are your sales team when your product is in their store. So what's the best way to make them care about your product? You know, what do they see as valuable? Is it education? Is it swag? Is it incentives? What is it? But when you should be annoying is your distributor ran out of inventory. This should not happen, but unfortunately it does all the time, and it's so annoying, and you should be annoying to them so that they stop doing it. Your distributor keeps promising to pitch you to retailers but doesn't. You should be annoying. Like, if they're promising something, they should be following through on it. And the more annoying that you are in an instance like this, the more likely that they'll actually bring it forward because they just want you off their back. Beware of false prophets. So if your broker isn't delivering the volume that you mutually agreed on due to lack of effort, obviously ensure first that it's not any kind of variables outside of their control, like supply chain or anything like that. But if it's simply them not delivering, then you should be annoying because you're paying them. If you feel you're being taken for a ride by your importer, distributor, broker, if they keep making empty promises, you should be annoying. So remember that no one cares about or will work as hard for your brand as you will. And sometimes you have to just keep being annoying to get shit done. And then the last one is probably like a narrow line to thread, but a retail buyer, if they keep ghosting you, be strategically annoying. So don't be annoying to the point where they're like, I'm not dealing with that person, I'm not dealing with that brand. But how can you like be strategically annoying so that you're doing something that they can't ignore, but in a way that impresses them as opposed to annoys them? So we delivered a life-size fox to a retailer into their reception because they kept ignoring us. And we got an email back. And it was the first time that we had gotten an email back from this buyer since we had started emailing them like probably 2 years previous. So that could have gone either way. They could have been like, why are you trying to disrupt my office? But luckily they saw it as kind of cool and edgy. So they got back to us, which is great. So then in terms of the marketing side of things, so how to get noticed. This is just my advice and my experience, but I would actually suggest that you ignore the category to a certain extent, because if you fixate on what everyone else is doing in the category, you'll create something differentiated. So you're basically saying, right, this is what exists in the category. How can I articulate that my brand is different from what everyone else in the category is doing? I feel like that's wasted energy. I think really the approach should be fixate on the consumer and what they're doing, and then you'll create something really distinctive. So don't look at, you know, for us, the Irish whiskey category, look at, we know who our consumer is. What else are they buying? What shoe brands are they buying? What TV are they watching? What songs or like musicians are they listening to? Why are they drawn to all those things? And then how can we borrow cues from those things and bring it into our whiskey to create something really distinctive? And this is just kind of from our perspective, how we kind of brought that to life. So instead of those very clean product shots and, you know, very particular way of consuming whiskey or occasion or anything like that, we completely flipped that on its head and we looked at sneaker brands, clothing brands, all those kind of things. And then we ended up with kind of this type of aesthetic, which I feel biasly probably is quite out there for the whiskey category. So things to consider.
Alex, I'm sorry, I'm going to have to interject. I've got 1 minute left on the Zoom because it's going to throw us all out. I'm just going to stop recording here now.